Hello and welcome to episode 218 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, the Australian province of Tasmania has the cleanest air in the world, beautiful scenery, and a thriving economy. So why does one of its residents listen to our show? Stay tuned, we'll find out.
13 children and 2 teens sued the state of Hawaii over pollution and have won an historic settlement. Some hail this as a great victory for the youth of today. But be warned, this will only make them drunk with power. I say beware the youth, as they seek to replace us all.
1% of Atlantans jump on a juicy e-bike program in the first 12 hours. 99% of Atlantans wonder what an e-bike is.
California is waging a war on mosquitoes by releasing more mosquitoes. The pilot project will release tens of thousands of irradiated lab-raised mosquitoes. These mosquitoes are all male, sterile, and this should disrupt population growth. If it goes badly, the horror film potential for giant radioactive mosquitoes will be enormous, so it's a win-win for Hollywood.
All that and more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show. And also this week, Brian, Canada passes a law that says you can't greenwash, and as a result, Alberta's evil oil propaganda war room had to shut down. It won't be missed. China may beat their 2030 decarbonizing goals this year.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, we haven't done this for a while, James. It's time to play Jeopardy Masters. So this isn't just regular Jeopardy.
Oh, no.
This is Jeopardy Masters, which has only the smartest of the smart contestants. These are basically the smartest people on the planet, and they're here, and they're ready to play Jeopardy!
Technology 6. The R1S from this car company is an all-electric SUV with a nearly 400-mile battery range. That R is for Rivian. Matt?
Oh, if all the questions were that, Brian, I could go on Jeopardy Masters and win money and get my eavesdrop fixed.
I got to tell you, this Jeopardy Masters, and that's a few weeks old. I'm kind of late catching up on it, but these people are so smart, it's insane. Like they're, quite often there'll be an answer on Jeopardy, and I'll think, oh yeah, I remember that, I recognize that. I didn't get it, but this one, the answers constantly are things I have never ever heard of in my entire life. But yeah, I could beat them on electric car trivia, and they showed a picture of the Rivian as well, which should have sealed the deal.
Whoa. I guess that's a lesson for Rivian to know that their brand is not penetrating yet. And
yeah,
also that smart people aren't that smart, maybe? I mean, they don't listen to the show, evidently, which disappoints me. I assumed they all did.
Well, they're all up on current events because a lot of the questions are current events and pop culture and new things that are happening. It isn't all just old history. But we're now, I don't know, I've done this 4 or 5 times now. They never know these sort of clean energy or EV kind of questions.
Why do you think there's so many of EV questions? I've noticed you brought a lot of them to the show. Like, it seems like somebody there is jonesing for EVs or trying to spread the word. And I think that's kind of cool of them. I mean, yeah, from my perspective, but
they're giving it a try, but I don't know if they've noticed like we have that, no one ever gets those. But of course, Jeopardy's supposed to be hard, so maybe they'll keep doing it and maybe the contestants will eventually learn.
Right.
Anyway, so I have an update on Cummins. We talked about them last week because I visited Columbus, Indiana, which is the home of Cummins Diesel. They make diesel engines and for things like, Dodge Ram pickup trucks. So in reading more about it, this story is from back in January. I didn't catch this last week, but Cummins was fined and has to pay out $2 billion in fines to the feds and to California for doing the same thing that Volkswagen did, which is diesel cheat devices.
Oh, I wonder if we even had this story on the podcast and forgot it because this sounds very familiar to me.
I don't think so, but yeah, it's possible. Like, I didn't really know what Cummins was until we visited Indiana recently. But, it isn't just Volkswagen. I know BMW was also fined for the same kind of diesel cheating thing. It's kind of like back in the days of the Tour de France when, everybody was doping in the Tour de France and, you had to be doping to keep up and win. All of these diesel makers, they all had the same problem and they all just started doping instead of, figuring out cleaner technology. Or maybe they I mean, I'm assuming they all knew each other was cheating, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they thought, oh my God, Volkswagen is ahead of us on technology. They've figured out how to make these diesel engines cleaner. We can't do it. So, we got to cheat to catch up. I don't know what the real story is.
So basically, there's a test that vehicles do in the United States for the EPA. It goes slow, it goes fast. It goes in different temperatures, I think, or maybe it's all the same sort of 70-degree-ish temperature. And then you base it on that. Well, they what do? They sort of program the computer to be really efficient at those speeds, but overall, it's not efficient at all. It's putting a lot of particulate matter in the air. Diesel is a terrible pollution for air, let alone climate.
Yeah, they all wrote software to basically detect when the engines were being tested, and then the engines behave differently when being tested.
That is so evil.
It's so evil, but, it isn't just VW, BMW, Cummins, and others as well.
So Volkswagen, in their settlement, they're putting up a charging network, billions of dollars in a charging network that doesn't work in the United States and Canada. Electrify America, Electrify Canada. It's got 350 kilowatts, very powerful chargers compared to everything else, mostly. Yet they are the least reliable, and it's almost a joke on how unreliable they are.
Yeah, and we've reported how, the Biden administration, I believe here in Canada as well, they've now come up with laws stating that, these chargers have to have a certain uptime, especially if they're getting government subsidies. So this is hopefully in the works to fix all that, and hopefully the Electrify America chargers will be working better in the future.
I hope so. Gosh, I hope so, because it's giving electric cars a bad name. And some of the people who are trying electric cars or bought their first one and they're encountering these terrible networks. It sucks. It sucks because it turns people off, and you don't need that. You don't need that at all. However, I don't have much this week. I did go storm chasing with the son the other night. We chased tornadoes. I don't know why. We gravitate towards danger. Seems like a good thing. How
close did you get?
We got into the storm that was tornado warned. And then
I thought you were going to say into the eye of the tornado.
No. No,
actually what cow flew by you.
What I fear most is hail, because the tornado is very small. We live in a giant, vast, open wasteland of prairie. The tornado's only going to hit a small area. We never get, F5s or anything. This was a tornado outbreak. One thing that I did note was that before we even left town, we got a tornado warning on our cell phone, like the emergency alert system. Yeah. And there wasn't a tornado warned storm within, I would say, 50 miles or 80 kilometers of the city at least. And yet, as my son pointed out, this is not good, because no one's going to believe it when there actually is a tornado, and they're not going to take shelter. So I don't know why these things aren't more. I can't imagine that we're picking up cell towers 80 kilometers away, because that usually doesn't happen. And it goes to specific cell towers within that area. So I'm kind of sick of it. Whenever there is a tornado outbreak, we tend to get these warnings. Like, I got 2 of them. And none of them were when I was actually in the tornado storm. So I went down towards the U.S. border, about 75 clicks north of the U.S. border, kilometers. And the storm was crossing the highway. So most storms have tornadoes, I think, on the, the back southern edge of it, or it wasn't the edge where we were. So we weren't going to see anything. We were just going to see a bunch of black and hail. But then another storm that became tornado warned was just behind it. We thought, oh, that's a little dinky little storm. It's also, we were fighting sunset because the sun was going down. I've got a picture of the sunset and the storm going on at the same time. It's, you don't want to be in the dark when you're out looking at storms and taking pictures and just experiencing them a little bit. Well, yeah, it was, we were fighting the sunset. So was going down, and we backed off, but that next storm, we just missed it because it was tornado warned too. Only because it had rotation, not because there was visual of a tornado. Yeah.
And it is possible, like way back, I think it's 1912, that our city had a tornado hit right in the middle of downtown. It's one of the most famous tornado hits in Canadian history, because, it's a tiny, tiny chance that these things are ever going to hit a populated area. But it did happen here back in 1912.
Especially here, if you think about the tornado alley in the United States, there's a lot of towns in those places. Ours is very sparse. We put up towns wherever the steam engines needed to stop and put water in, and some of those are ghost towns now, and some of them are still alive, but not terribly big. So generally when a tornado touches down, it's, a grain bin on a farm that's turned over and everybody's fine. So we actually haven't had, knock on wood, major injuries or anything like that from tornadoes here, even though we get quite a few of them. It's just the odds are, famous last words. Next week I'll be dead chasing a tornado, but it is a very cool thing to do, because nature is awesome and you kind of want to see what that's like. And I think my son, when he was little, like me, I feared storms, because when I was a kid, I think I was at my best friend's birthday party a block away, which was along the railway tracks, and we weren't far from the edge of the city. So we could see twin tornadoes down on the horizon by a local community. And back then, this was 1974, probably 75. I don't know. In that area, there was no radar apps. There was nothing like that. There wasn't even radar. Like, they didn't have the weather radar back then. So they were, broadcasting hearsay over the radio waves, and you didn't know anything. And they seemed headed our way. And then, like, everyone was scared. So I got scared. I didn't know what they were. And then I suddenly became scared of lightning, because we had this intense storm at the same time. So my kid was afraid of tornadoes when he was a kid. So now he chases them, because, that's kind of the way it was with me. I think I kind of have a fascination. A lot of people do, but you got to be careful. And we kind of know what we're doing. We kind of know not to go on certain sides of the storm. We kind of know which way they're going. He's a geography genius. Like, he knows exactly where we are at all times. So that's helpful. I wouldn't do it myself. I'd probably be dead by now if I did it myself. Yeah,
and there are tools, as you say, weather radar and stuff that you can access.
They're frustratingly behind, though. Sometimes they're 20 minutes behind. You're looking at an image for 20 minutes. That's no good when you're chasing a tornado. It's life and death. No good at all.
All right, so more legal news here on the Clean Energy Show. We love this. We love when the kids sue their governments.
If this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair.
And we have an update from Hawaii, and they have settled. So 13 children and 2 teens sued Hawaii over the threat posed by climate change. And instead of going to court, they have reached a settlement. And so it's an ambitious plan to decarbonize the state's transportation system over the next 21 years. So they saw perhaps the writing on the wall. These suits aren't always successful. It was successful in Montana. And then I think another one in Oregon was dismissed, and that's now being appealed. But in Hawaii, it looks like they figured that they might lose this one, and rather than go into a protracted legal battle over something everyone knows we have to do anyway, decarbonize. So the lawsuit said that one plaintiff, a 14-year-old native Hawaiian, was from a family that farmed taro for more than 10 generations. However, extreme droughts and heavy rains caused by climate change have reduced crop yields and threatened her ability to continue the cultural practice. The complaint said rising sea levels also threaten to put their lands underwater. Another plaintiff lost her home twice due to climate change-induced events, according to Our Children's Trust, a public interest law firm that's representing the plaintiffs. The flooding from a 2018 hurricane and last year's deadly wildfire on the island of Maui displaced this one family twice. So the lawsuit has argued that Hawaii was violating the state constitution by operating a transportation system that harms the climate and infringes upon the right to a clean and healthy environment, which is a similar thing that they have in Montana, and that's how they were able to win. It accused the Department of Transportation of consistently prioritizing building highways over other types of transportation. And I have a friend who lived in Hawaii for a few years. And it's known apparently for its traffic. Like the traffic in Hawaii is really bad, which is something you wouldn't think of when you think of this beautiful island paradise. But they just have developed a car-dependent culture. And this is going to apparently have to change. And, more options like public transportation. They're going to spend at least $40 million dedicated to expanding public vehicle, electric vehicle charging, and other things to do with pedestrian and bicycle and public transit things are now going to have to be prioritized due to the settlement. And there's a judge that is going to enforce this agreement if disputes arise. So, the kids can keep an eye on it and check and see if Hawaii is actually, doing what they said they're going to do.
Yeah, that organization is fantastic, and this is they're racking up the victories. I hope that people donate to them, and I hope they get better at it. And this is progress when victories happen in court and where they can't happen politically.
Yeah. No, this is an amazing mechanism to force governments to do what they need to do.
If there is a court system in the United States, it used to be under pressure.
Oh, zing.
But that's another podcast, which I don't have. Sorry about that. China has reduced power generation from fossil fuels as output from sunlight and water surges. It's feeding hopes that the world's biggest polluter may have peaked emissions years before its own deadline. This is from Bloomberg. Thermal power, which is another word for coal, usually, which accounts for the bulk of China's carbon footprint, fell 4.3% in May from the previous year, the biggest drop since 2022. That's from the Statistics Bureau. They reported a week ago on Monday. But I guess recently, hydroelectric has jumped 39% after heavy rains fed a recovery in the world's most powerful dams. Output from large solar farms rose by almost 30%, following a record increase in new panels last year. 1 year, Brian, 30%. Yeah. And it's not slowing down because the prices are so low. I don't know what I think. Yeah, it's actually the solar output. I think we'll talk about this in the lightning round, is really optimistic for this year. It's incredible, actually. Thermal's decline since has accelerated, according to the Chinese Coal Transportation and Distribution Association, dropping 13% year on year in the first half of June. So China in 1 year on year, June, down 13% is really encouraging because China's big problem is its coal generation. The data reinforces estimates that China's emissions will fall this year as clean energy starts to meet all of the nation's consumption growth. So instead of adding coal, that's coming to an end. We hear that politically all the time. China has coal. They're building more coal. Well, they're not using it. Not very much. It's remaining. They're paying them to not burn anything. It's there for a backup, as we would use natural gas in North America as a backup. China's vowed to peak carbon before 2030, a key milestone on its road to zeroing out emissions by 2060. It may be doing that this year. Brian, is 2024, just to double check that with you.
Yeah.
That's a long way ahead of schedule if that happens. It may not.
Yeah.
It has to do with the economy. If the economy takes off, that's a different story. But it's looking very good. Atomic generation from nuclear reactor will likely begin rising later this decade, but they only put one reactor connected to the grid last year, even though they're building a few of them, compared to the expected average of 5 a year through 2027. Well, even in China, the nuclear rollout is going very slowly.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's 2024. We started this podcast in 2020. Hope to wrap it up by 2030 when all these emissions are going to be way, way down.
Okay, let's dip into the mailbag. Actually, this week we have one of our beloved voicemail clips. This is
excellent.
From someone in Tasmania, the province in Australia. I apologize, Brian. That was the wrong clip.
That sounds like the wrong clip.
I have the right one here.
Hi, guys. Damon here from Tasmania. Been listening to the show for a couple of years and love the way you do your stuff. I'm from Tasmania, which is a small group of islands off the south coast of Australia, not to be confused with Tanzania. We're 99% renewable power here, importing occasionally from the mainland in a crisis. It's primarily hydro with some wind, and I've invested in solar on my home roof. I have a Nissan Leaf, which I want to have vehicle to home implemented to use it as a battery. What I find frustrating about Vehicle to Home in Australia is that we are in a 2-year pilot to prove that this will work and how to implement it. This work's already been done in the UK and other nations, and we should be piggybacking off that and getting this stuff done. Also, the current party in opposition on mainland Australia are also looking at nuclear for backup baseload. Yes, we have an abundance of uranium, but we also have large reserves of lithium, which we could refine here and then build the storage batteries here, creating home-based manufacturing, improving our economy and providing new jobs. Anyway, needed to get that off my chest. Love your work, and I'll continue to be listening. It's a great show, guys. Thank you.
Wow, that's great to hear. And like I said, Tasmania is a group of 1,000 islands, as he pointed out.
1,000.
1,000, but mostly it's one big one. We have a place here in Ontario called 1,000 Islands where my parents lived for a while. It's not 1,000 islands. It's euphemistically 1,000, but that is there's literally 1,000 islands as part of Tasmania, and the cleanest air in the world. I envy you, and bloody beautiful place too.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, I share the frustration about the slowness sometimes of like everybody wants to do a pilot project on something instead of just getting down to the business of doing it. So yeah, Vehicle to Home has been explored already in pilot programs in other places. So, let's just get on with it. It's a climate emergency. These things have to move quicker.
That's Damon in Tasmania. I would love to visit Tasmania, Brian, but it's a 1-day and 2-hour plane trip to get there. That's a long trip.
Yeah, basically the other side of the planet.
They're very expensive. I have some facts about Tasmania, because whenever we get a letter from a less than usual place, I'd like to kind of learn about where our listener is. The state encompasses the main island of Tasmania, the 26th largest island in the world, and surrounding 1,000 islands. It is Australia's least populous state with 569,000 plus residents. Tasmania is a significant agricultural exporter, as well as a significant destination for ecotourism. About 42% of its land area, including national parks and World Heritage Sites, is protected in some form of reserve. So 42% of it is basically protected land because it's that precious. The first environmental political party in the world was founded in Tasmania. So I can see, and now I'm starting to wonder why all 500,000 of them are not listening to our show. It seems perfect for them. Tell your friends, Damon. Tell your friends. It's just, like I said, though, long ways away.
Yeah, and if you want to contact us, you can get us at cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, and then the voicemail option is speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. All right, so we got a story here from California. This isn't quite new. This story came out in May, but I just came across it and thought it was interesting because, I don't know, it was about 10 years ago that I visited Los Angeles. And I was struck by the fact that there were no mosquitoes there. And, I commented.
So was I. And, when my family went there, we kept, okay, where's the mosquitoes? So we packed off. We spent like 3 weeks in California in various places. And I had to look it up. And I remember, there was these other bugs that come out at like 8 o'clock or something, some places. Yeah. So it was very specific. And it's all the more reason, Brian, for us to move to California.
Oh, man. I want to go to California.
I wonder how
unfortunately,
the Tasmania mosquito problem is. It's probably pretty high. But,
yeah, I imagine.
Yeah. Cleaner air, though.
In any case, I don't know. I guess there are now mosquitoes in Los Angeles. If we have any listeners in Los Angeles, kind of let us know. But they have moved in to California more so than before. And it's in part because of climate change, changing climate, and then, occasionally wetter seasons. The dryness is one of the things that people cited when I said, how come there's no mosquitoes here? And they say, oh, it's too dry. Well, they do have droughts still, but
the rainy season is in the fall and winter, I believe, right? The late fall, early winter, what we would consider late fall, early winter. And sometimes it doesn't come and the wildfires burn in November. But yeah, that's why. Maybe they have mosquitoes for a little while, then it dries up again. But
something
from
like that.
my perspective, from a man who has not opened his pool yet, and it's almost July, it's a problem, Brian. It's a problem. But I have to keep it running, even though I'm not using it, so there's not mosquitoes in the water, and so it doesn't turn green.
Yeah.
So I have to waste money circulating the water, even though it's too cold out. It's got to stay that way into July.
Terrible. We really got to move to California. So, so there's a pilot project, and this has been done in other places. So, the research has been done, but they're going to release tens of thousands of irradiated lab-raised mosquitoes. They're male. They've been sterilized by the radiation. And so they're going to find wild females to mate with and impregnate them. And then it's a dead end. And hopefully this stops everything from expanding. But apparently they actually glow under black light because they've been irradiated. They're actually like fluorescent neon mosquitoes if you look at them in a black light.
And there's probably people with black lights in their house getting high and watching the mosquitoes glow by.
Yeah, well, it's actually, it sounds like it's a dye. They dye them so they know which ones are the mosquitoes.
Oh.
They irradiate them and they dye them, and then
Science.
They can see it under
What
a black
can't
light.
it do? It's dying mosquitoes.
So, there's a nice quote here. This story is from NBC News. Everybody always said, well, our weather isn't suitable for mosquitoes. But, the mosquitoes adapt and our weather has changed. We get more moisture in the summer, and people create these ideal little moist mini climates in their backyards with lush plants and everything. And so mosquitoes are moving into California.
Oh no, one bastion. Have to move to right into the desert, I guess, away from these lush backyards. You were in Palm Springs recently, which is a desert place.
Yeah, I don't remember there being mosquitoes there.
Well, there you go. Mosquitoes are a terrible thing here. It's rained every day this spring, and thunderstorms and different ways of getting rain. We're not used to having rainy days. And of course, this is the one year that my east trough was broken. And, and I thought, well, it doesn't matter. It's going to be dry all summer. I'll get around to it. So figure something out.
No, there were lots of mosquitoes in Wisconsin when we were touring the Frank Lloyd Wright properties. Everybody was smacking themselves all the time.
Oh, yeah. Wisconsin's known for its mosquitoes. We used to drive through there every summer to go to the Lake Huron area of Ontario where my grandmother lived. Well, Brian, the Alberta War Room has shut down. We've mentioned this on the show before. Now, Alberta is a province in Canada, for those of you in Tasmania. It is the place where oil comes from in Canada, mostly, a little bit from where Brian and I live next door, but most of it comes from Alberta. That's where the oil sands are. They have a very right-wing government, Florida style. Not really living in reality, I would say. The politics of Alberta right now is kind of cuckoo. And the Alberta government has closed its oil and gas so-called war room, which is what the previous premier of that province called it. And it was started in 2019 to fight against so-called false information about Canada's fossil fuel industry. They saw a threat from environmentalists in the States pouring money into information campaigns, and apparently that was all wrong. Oil is clean and beautiful, and you can drink this stuff, and it'll make your bowels work better.
So-called false information, or as we like to call it, information.
They put millions of dollars into this, by the way, and no one even read it. I mean, had a YouTube channel with like less views than us, and we don't have multi-million-dollar budgets. And it was kind of a joke. And, it wasn't working because no one read it. Not the only people who read it were Albertans, and they're already on board, I can tell you, with oil and gas living forever and giving them no sales tax and, really good roads when you cross the border.
Oil and gas has been very good to Alberta. They have great infrastructure and no sales tax because of it.
The War Room made many mistakes and had very few supporters, so it was bound to fail. But the Canadian Energy Centre, that's what it was called, was set up in 19 as a private corporation to avoid access to information laws that governments have to face when they're a government organization. They didn't want the access to information because the information they're peddling are lies. There, I said it. People want me to speak the truth to the world. Damn it. This is a ridiculous organization that had $30 million annual budget. $30 million. Can you imagine what our YouTube channel would be doing with $30 million?
That would be amazing.
Yeah. There'd be dancers and orchestras
We could hire Taylor Swift to write a theme song for us.
Sure. And she would perform it live every week. That's what we could do. And we could do it from Tasmania if we wanted to. The war room failed to meet expectations and was dissolved in September 2023. It was promised $22 million for pro-fossil fuel campaign. It faced criticism for several issues, including sole source contracts and attacking a Netflix kids film, which we talked about. This Netflix
2 or 3 years ago.
kids film, which talked about oil being bad, and went right after and said, you're green, you're communist educating our children against oil is wonderful. How could you bad talk oil in a kids film? That was one of their big fights. Didn't go very well. Was a joke. The closure is partly due to the federal bill in Canada, C-59, a federal anti-greenwashing law, which, by the way, applies to everyone, not just oil and gas. You have to back up your facts if you're going to make claims, and why shouldn't you? Gosh darn it.
Yeah, the EU has similar kind of laws. And
both parties in our province are against it because they thought it would hurt the oil and gas industry if they had to tell the truth. My God, man. Markham Hislop, energy journalist from around here, said it was a motley collection of journalism hacks and libertarian fanatics that should have been hurled into the sun years ago. Couldn't agree more, Markham. The Canadian government passed a bill requiring corporations, including oil and gas companies, to back up their environmental claims. And the Alberta government says it will irreparably harm Canadians' ability to hear the truth about the energy industry. If we have to tell the truth, it'll impair them from hearing the truth. LOL, I say. In other Canadian oil province news, the place where Brian and I live, Saskatchewan, Canada, has done this. The province has announced that a class called Oil and Gas 20, that's a grade 10 class, a 10th grade class, will be offered in high schools. And I wasn't going to talk about this because I thought, why should I give these idiots more airtime?
So depressing.
But people on Twitter have egged me on, Brian. They've egged me on. They want my trademark passion and outrage.
Well, you and I know teachers. I mean, there's a way to teach an oil and gas class that would teach the truth about it.
Sure. The courses, they've hooked up with actual oil companies to come up with a curriculum. See, our government thinks that, well, first of all, their funders are all oil related or pipeline related or oil industry related or people who sympathize with the oil industry, which is, I can't wait. I hope I live long enough. I have to get my doctors working on keeping me alive to see the demise of oil and gas, or at least the beginning of it. The courses will include 50 hours of online theory and 50 hours of work placement. So if you want your kid to go work near a pump jack, good luck. My friend Jack was telling me the other day, I can't believe people actually work there because he used to do that when he was a kid because his dad owned an oil consulting company. He says they're extremely dangerous. The oil drilling and pump jacks, things are flailing around, chains are whipping. He says he can't believe more people aren't killed, and some people are, of course.
No, I know someone who was killed several years ago.
The province is letting an oil company develop this course, as I said, and the premier said this, I think it's just really good exposure for both our students and exposing the industry to these children, our brain-limited premier said. And so I wondered if it will stop there, Brian. So I made a government ad to see what else they might bring to students in high school to educate them about jobs.
The Government of Saskatchewan is offering new high school courses designed with your children's future in mind.
Saskatchewan, powered by the past.
We're going to prepare the next generation for exciting futures in tomorrow's energy. Oil and gas. The future is oil and gas, but few people know that. So we're partnering with oil companies to educate your children properly. And we're not stopping there. We're also offering classes on steam engine repair, steam engine design, and advanced steam engine appreciation. Because our children need to be ready for the future, we're also offering courses for intermediate switchboard operator, leach collector, advanced elevator operator, video store management, and that profession where people go out and light whale oil lamps on the streets at dusk. The Government of Saskatchewan, preparing for the future.
Warning: as the rest of the world thrives on rapidly expanding green economy, Saskatchewan is destined to become an economic wasteland. Consider moving to Manitoba.
Saskatchewan, powered by the past.
You idiots.
Wow, that was amazing. Okay, some news from New York City, from the ridiculous to the sublime, from the wasteland to the big city. This is a story from Canary Media. I love talking about the high-rise projects in New York City. This is something that's come up a few times now. And it's happening because New York State has introduced tough legislation that's basically going to force large buildings of more than 25,000 square feet to meet specific emission limits, which will become more stringent in 2030, or they're going to have to start facing fines. So this particular one, this is it's a 1931 building. This is an Art Deco office building from 1931 that's being retrofitted. We talked previously about new buildings going up, but everybody knows these tough rules are coming in 2030, and you're just going to have to pay fines if you don't clean up your buildings. And it reminded me, of course, the auto industry had very similar kinds of warnings about, switching over to electric vehicles, and they mostly ignored those warnings and just paid the fines. So it begs the question, are other buildings in New York just going to pay the fines? I don't know. That seems like a terrible idea. But so they're expecting that this building, once they're complete, so they're going to take out all the fossil fuel boilers and basically outfit them with heat pumps. And there's going to be one on each floor. And it's basically going to be a, first of all, self-contained system that just hot and cold water will run through pipes in the building and basically go where it's needed or not needed, because you might have, like, say, a server room in the basement that's going to be too hot and it needs to be cooled, whereas other parts of the building, need the opposite. And, in past systems, it tends to be one or the other, right? You either turn on the heat or you turn on the air conditioning. But this is a way more efficient system that gets heat and cooling to each floor, to each place that it's needed. And they say it's going to use 25% less energy than a conventional design and reduce the greenhouse pollution by 70% above the 2019 levels. And then as the grid cleans up, because as we know, all of our electricity grids are getting cleaner over the years, they expect that to go up to 90% cleaner by 2035. So they're also partnering with other buildings. So they're actually going to connect it to 555 Greenwich Street, which is next door. This one is 345 Hudson. The building next door has geothermal, which goes way, way deep underground. And they're going to connect the two systems, which will just give them basically more options in terms of, heat pumps, heat exchangers just move heat around. They don't necessarily create it. They can amplify it, but you just take the heat where it's not needed and put it where it's needed. And this could end up with many more kind of district heating kind of solutions, something more common in Europe. But, eventually multiple high-rises could be sharing these same kind of systems. It's amazing.
Yeah, they heat and they cool. So if you have to replace those things anyway, you have probably a more efficient air conditioning as well, because it's modern and they're getting a little bit more efficient. So the heating part is way more efficient than what you were using. Yeah,
heat pump air conditioners are, way more efficient than normal ones for reasons I don't quite understand. But this is amazing.
All right. Well, that's good news. And it obviously in places like New York City, a lot of people are living in high rises, the high density of the population. So you need to address those people. You can't just address suburbanites like you and I, which is easier.
Yeah. In most places, transportation is the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions. But in New York, it's buildings, because it's so densely populated and people tend to use public transit.
All right. Well, I just wanted to mention that Canada, the government, has said it's going to do 30 days of examination on whether they should add tariffs to Chinese-made EVs. And, the United States, the Biden administration just put a 100% tariff that's starting in July. And that's because they're protecting their auto industry. And I'm hearing a lot of chatter about this now from analysts, and they're saying that, like Toby Seba, who we follow for disruption of the clean technologies, he went to one of the Chinese, I think the Beijing Auto Show was in Beijing this year. And or was it Shanghai? I can't remember, but it was one of the major cities. They had hosted the auto show. And he said the Chinese cars are amazing. And I hear this a lot. He said they're not what you think. They are, in many respects, higher technology than what we are used to in North America. So he said that they're 90% of a Tesla at half the price, which struck me. They blame some of that on the government subsidizing the auto industry, giving them tax breaks, but it's not that. That's only a small part of the equation. It's the supply chain and their prowess at manufacturing.
But of course, the subsidies are always the reason for imposing the tariffs. The idea being that the EU or North America can claim that, these are way too subsidized. They just have excess supply and they're dumping. You're not allowed to dump your excess goods below cost in other countries. So that's the justification. But it means here in North America, Canada will probably align with the U.S. in terms of tariffs, and we're just not going to get these cheap EVs. And unfortunately, EVs will remain expensive here because of that.
And here's the thing, though. They're protecting an auto industry that was not ready to go to EVs, and they've dropped the ball recently. They've all, they haven't been doing it economically. They haven't been doing it competitively in price. They don't know how to come up with EVs. They haven't really put their heart into it. And I've said it before, they would be wiped out in a matter of years, maybe 10 years, maybe less, if the Chinese auto industry was allowed to come into North America. And of course, that would help the environment. Now, if you work in, I know we've had at least one person who works in an auto factory, listen to the show. That's not good news for you. And you want to have your job and your futures and your family and your pension protected. But it goes to show that we are under pressure and eventually they will come here. They may set up shop here. I don't know how economically they can build when they build in North America. It's not all labor. It's just maybe the quality of labor is not going to be what they're looking for. I went looking for information on, there was a fire at was it Korea or somewhere? There was a Korean company in somewhere in Asia that had a fire recently, and 21 people died of a lithium battery fire. So I went looking for information on it to mention it on the show, and I decided to search Twitter, and all I got on Twitter was negative Nellies saying, "See, they think this is going to protect the planet? Ha! What a joke." And that's what people are exposed to, and people who don't know better, people who don't listen to our show, are going to hear, and that's going to be the mindset. But it is a terrible situation, and they're going to look into why that happened and why there wasn't, safeguards in place and
coal
escapes.
Plants and gas plants blow up all the time.
And also, Brian, they kill people by the hundreds of thousands in the world every year. It's time to move on. Time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
COP29 President-designate Mukhtar Babayev says the UK's transition away from coal from 40% of power in 2012 to zero in a few months from now is one of the fastest energy transitions in the world, it is an inspiring example of ambition, and that is a good thing that what the UK is doing, and they're going to probably have a change in government on July 4th. As wildfire season starts, some utilities in North America are now operating without insurance and are on the hook for millions of dollars in damages if their power lines are linked to a wildfire blaze that is started by a downed power line. Time for a CS Fast fact, 9,000 coal plants make up 1/3 of global emissions. Those have got to go, and the UK is an example of how to do it.
Starting to happen, absolutely.
Oh, let's do another one. Every 9 days, each resident of Bogota, Colombia, has to spend 24 hours without running water due to water shortages caused by, guess what, climate change. This is from PV Magazine. Heat pump plus PV, that's heat pumps plus solar on a roof, is cheaper than gas heating after 11 to 14 years. So if you combine the two, which are both expensive, basically you start to save money 11 to 14 years in. In a new weekly update for PV Magazine, Solcast, a DNV company, reports that a low-pressure system over the Mediterranean led to a significant dust transport event. There's something you don't hear every day. A dust transport event affecting solar generation across Europe. Throughout the week, Weak low pressure in the Mediterranean set up a southerly winds from Saharan Africa across the Mediterranean into Europe, drawing dust into Italy and southern France. High pressure ridging from the Atlantic introduced westerly winds, pushing the dust around the north of the Alps into southern Germany. What a weird thing to happen from Africa. You're getting dust and it's taking away your solar generation by a few percent.
I thought a significant dust transport event was a Grateful Dead tour.
Okay. Global solar industry in 2024 is on track to smash its huge record deployment of 444 gigawatts in 2023. It's matched its huge record of deployment, 240 the year before. That's, practically doubling from 2023 to 2024. And you might think, well, okay, it was a good year, but that can't continue. And it looks like it will. 2024 global solar installations of 600 to 660 gigawatts will be 40 to 50% higher than the previous record in last year. We're getting towards a terawatt, Brian, of solar deployment per year in the world, which is, people said that wouldn't happen by 2060, and it could happen next year, the year after. We could be at I don't think it's going to go too far beyond that because we're kind of getting saturated with solar and you can't do it at the same pace forever, but it's reached that very low price and, the learning curve of being able to install it properly and cheaply. People are able to do that and analyze things and get the permits going. This is also from PV Magazine. They had a couple stories about noise walls. Those walls they put up by freeways and trains that sort of block the noise. I wish we had one here. We've been promised one for decades and never had one in my neighborhood, but we need one. Lithuania-based solar module manufacturer Solitech, a provider of noise reduction foam and noise attenuation walls, are participating in 2 pilot projects integrating panels into those noise barriers, which seems like another one of those, seems like it's the year of putting solar panels into fences and walls.
Love it.
And it's a great way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And this is going into a railway near Vilnius, and the other along a national E5 highway. So, looking at the picture, they're not all solar, but the top part of them are solar. And I'd love to see that. Porsche has increased the charging power from 270 to 320 watts in their cars. Kilowatts, pardon me. They've had these electric cars for 5 years now, and they saw that the degradation in those cells is lower than what they expected. So now with a software update, you're able to charge your car significantly faster than you were before, which is nice to see. Because they would charge pretty fast to me. They were very fast anyway, aren't they?
That's great. I can hit 257 kilowatts in my car on occasion.
So, hitting 320 would be even better. Mexico just hit a searing 52 degrees Celsius, 125.6 Fahrenheit, tying the highest temperature ever recorded in Mexico. Let's do another CES fast fact. It took solar just 8 years to grow from 100 terawatt hours, not terawatts, but terawatt hours per year in the world. That is producing that much electricity for, hours of time, to 1,000 terawatt hours of generation. So it went up 10x in the hours of generation that it provides electricity in 8 years. That is a fast expansion. Coal took 32 years to do that, compared to 8 years. Gas took 28 years, and hydro took 39 years to reach this milestone.
And solar did it in
Suck
8.
It, oil.
That's amazing.
That's what I have to say about that. And finally, this week, the Atlanta Regional Commission has partnered with the City of Atlanta and Propel Atlanta to offer an equity-focused e-bike rebate program designed to provide affordable transportation options for City of Atlanta residents, particularly moderate and low-income individuals. This is the one where I said 1% of the population has signed up. This is a $1 million investment from the City of Atlanta. This initiative aims to break down barriers to e-bike ownership, reduce transportation costs, and replace solo car trips to work, the grocery store, and local parks and recreation centers. I was thinking Hawaii has such perfect weather. We were talking about the transportation, the car culture. Well, it seems like a good e-bike place because I've been there. Weather's perfect all the time, or pretty close to it. Approximately 1% of those people in Atlanta have applied for an e-bike in the first 12 hours of the program after it went live. So they might have to put some more money into that, Brian, but it's a good example of people wanting to do this.
That is absolutely amazing and a great way to end the show for this week. Please take the time to contact us. We're cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Around social media, Clean Energy Pod. And there are videos of the show on TikTok and YouTube, including sometimes special content that's not featured on the show.
Yes, and TikTok now has a 1 hour limit for us to upload because we're a fairly popular channel. We've got access to the 1 hour uploads. My other TikTok channel is restricted to like 30 seconds. It's not as big, but yeah, we could do 60-minute videos now. Last week's show, the video version was like 3 seconds over, so I couldn't upload it. I tried.
Oh, damn it.
And I failed and I gave up, but I might. Nobody watches an hour-long video. Trust me. But I'm going to throw it up anyway for the heck of it.
Yeah. See what happens.
See what happens. They're trying to become YouTube, so we'll see. By the way, video versions of our podcast are released on YouTube the following weekend, the weekend following the audio version. So if you're looking for that, we're on our YouTube channel. We have a Clean Energy store linked in your show notes with hats, t-shirts, and mugs. We ask, as always, to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you are listening to this. If you're new to the show, welcome, and I hope you stay with us. Consider subscribing for free so that the episodes come to you every week. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.